I felt it before I even heard the words, the familiar emptiness creeping up inside of me. Jason's little hand tugged at my sleeve, his voice trembling. Mom, Dad didn't come home again. I forced a smile, brushing away a tear I didn't realize had fallen. I set down the needlework, my fingers numb from the years of pretending everything was fine. 3 children, alone, in this house where silence echoed louder than any words. For 8 years, I had waited for the man I thought I knew to come home. But John Walker, my husband, had never been the man I thought he was. I'll take care of this, I whispered to myself, but the words felt foreign. What had I been doing all these years, hoping for something that would never come? 8 years of marriage, and yet, he was gone more often than not. 300 days out of the year spent elsewhere, and when he was home, half of that was spent sleeping, shutting me out, shutting us all out. The day he promised to take the kids to the movies was no different. The clock ticked past PM, and there was no sign of him. I could feel the rage building inside, a fire that had been simmering for too long. Jason looked at me with those wide, innocent eyes, his sadness cutting deeper than any betrayal could. Tyler, my 4-year-old, stood on tiptoe, wiping away tears that weren't even his. Mom, don't cry. I pulled them all into my arms, squeezing them tight, knowing this moment would change everything. This was the moment I would no longer be the woman hiding in the shadows of a broken marriage. Sweethearts, I said softly, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside. If Mommy and Daddy can't live together anymore, would you want to stay with me? They answered without hesitation. Yes. I stood up, my heart racing with both fear and resolve. Tomorrow, everything would change. I moved to the nightstand, my hands shaking slightly as I reached for the metal box hidden in the drawer. For years, John had thought I was just a simple housewife, a country girl who didn't understand the ways of the world. But he had no idea what I had been preparing in secret. The money I earned doing needlework for military families, the FEs I'd gotten for writing letters and applications for people he never cared to ask about. And the most important thing, the dowry money from my family. I stared at the stack of cash, the IUs, the documents. All these years, I had been invisible to him. He thought I was just a foolish woman who couldn't see through his lies. But he was wrong. And tomorrow, he would realize just how wrong he was. John thought he could control everything, including me. But now, I saw things clearly. 2 years ago, I had discovered the truth about his affair. Mary Lewis, a young nurse with a smile as fake as her innocence, and a father who was high up in the military hospital. I had swallowed my anger for the sake of the kids, for the hope that I could give them a family. But no more. Jason, help. Mommy, pack the clothes for your brother and sister, I said firmly. We're going far tomorrow. Jason looked at me, uncertainty clouding his face. Mom, where are we going? To the military compound. To find your dad's superior, I answered. I pulled out the best outfit I had ever bought, deep blue Dacron shirt, black slacks. I had saved it for a special occasion. I had never worn it, but tomorrow, I would wear it to confront those high-ranking officers. Mom, are we going to tattle? Tyler asked, blinking up at me. We're not tattling, I said, my voice steely. We're going to get back what we deserve. I dressed Lily in her pajamas, my mind already racing with the plan. John was a company commander now, which meant he had access to certain benefits, free medical care, a good school for the kids, even job opportunities. But all we had ever gotten were scraps, nothing but a small living allowance. Nothing else. Because John was too afraid that if I went to the compound, I'd uncover his lies. Tomorrow, I would walk through those gates with my children. I would show them who John Walker really was. The anger inside me began to feel like a fire that couldn't be contained. I was going to make sure that everyone knew. Everyone would see that he had a wife and kids. They would see Mary Lewis for what she really was. More importantly, I was going to fight for the rights my children and I deserved. No more would I be the quiet, suffering wife. Tomorrow, the world would see who I truly was. Jason's voice broke through my thoughts. Mom, will Dad be mad? If he's mad, he's mad, I said, my voice fierce. I'm not afraid of him. I stroked Jason's hair, feeling a strange calm settle over me. Remember this, Jason. No one in this world gets to bully us, not even your father. That night, I sat alone under the dim light of the kerosene lamp, organizing the evidence I had gathered over the years. Photos of John and Mary on their dates, receipts for the gifts he bought her, love letters. I had it all, enough to ruin him. I smirked bitterly as I thought about John. He had no idea what was coming. He thought I was just a country girl. Tomorrow, he would learn that I was so much more. Tomorrow, everything changed. The next morning came, cold and heavy. The air felt thicker than usual, like something was pressing down on me. The kids were still asleep, their soft breaths filling the quiet room. I dressed them quietly, each motion purposeful, like I was preparing for war. When I walked past the kitchen, the empty space where John's mug used to sit seemed to mock me. He used to sit there, pretending everything was fine, like I didn't know what was happening behind my back. But today I wasn't just a wife. I was someone who had had enough. Jason stirred as I packed his things. Mom, where are we going? His eyes still held that look of hope, the kind only children have before they truly understand how ugly the world can be. We're going to find Daddy, Jason, I said, voice firm, but inside, it was trembling with a mix of dread and resolve. I couldn't show any weakness. Not now. Not when everything was finally about to change. Tyler bounced around, eager, oblivious to the weight of the moment. Are we going to the movie now? No, sweetie, I replied. Mommy's going to take care of something today. Something important. I threw one last glance at the house, the life we had built together. It felt hollow now, like a stage set that had been knocked over, leaving nothing but the truth behind the props. We were done. I was done. We left the house, walking to the gates of the military compound with a purpose. The sentries at the entrance didn't even seem to notice us at first. A mother and her 3 children in simple clothes. I didn't fit the usual profile of a military wife, well kept, neat, poised. But they didn't know what I had become, what I had learned. One of the guards glanced up and frowned as he saw us approach. His eyes lingered on the children, then moved to me. I didn't wait for him to speak. I'm looking for Company Commander John Walker, I said loudly, my voice cutting through the morning stillness. And I am his wife, Emma Shen. The guard hesitated, his face flickering with recognition. You're who? He asked, stammering slightly. His wife, I repeated, holding up my marriage certificate and household registration booklet. The official document slapped down in front of him like a challenge. The guard stiffened, his eyes darting nervously as he glanced at my children. The hesitation in his movements was almost palpable, and I knew what he was thinking. He was probably trying to decide if this was some sort of trap, or if I was really John Walker's wife, someone he had never heard of. After all, John had never mentioned me, not to anyone who mattered. But now, I was here, and I was going to make sure they remembered me. I need to speak with his superior, I said, cutting through the silence that followed. Immediately, the guard turned quickly, clearly unsettled by the sudden confrontation. He retreated into the guardhouse, muttering something about needing to check. I didn't wait. I was done with waiting. I didn't care how they felt about it. This wasn't about him anymore. This was about me. About us. As the minutes dragged on, I could feel the eyes of the military staff around me, the whispers just barely hidden behind their polite smiles. It didn't matter. No one could stop me now. Not anymore. The guard returned, his face pale. Company Commander Walker is in a meeting, he said quickly, trying to wave us off. Would you like to wait here, or go sit in the family housing area? Family housing area? I asked, my voice rising, sharp. We've been married for 8 years, and I've never been told there's a family housing area? How is that possible? His eyes widened, the embarrassment clear on his face. I don't know the specifics, he stammered, stepping back. Perhaps you should wait for him to finish. No, I said, pushing past him and walking towards the gate. I'm going to see the political officer. Right now. The guard panicked, rushing to block my path. You can't just walk into the military compound, he said, his voice frantic. Why not? I snapped. I'm John Walker's wife. I have every right to be here. These are my children. I grabbed the marriage certificate and slapped it down in front of him again, my fingers shaking with adrenaline. We're entitled to all the benefits of being a military family. You think I don't know that? The guard took the document, checking it carefully, but the expression on his face was growing darker. He knew I was right. He knew this was going to be an issue he wouldn't be able to sweep under the rug. Just then, I saw a familiar figure approaching. John, sweating, out of breath, and clearly rattled. Emma, what are you doing here? He demanded, his voice a mix of surprise and irritation. Am I not allowed to come? I retorted, stepping closer, my gaze unflinching. Company Commander Walker, I'm here because for the last 8 years, I've been kept in the shadows. No benefits, no medical care for our children. My son, Jason, goes to a village school while your fellow officers' kids get an education here. Tell me why that is. John took a step forward, reaching out to grab my arm. Let's talk about this at home, he said, his voice a bit too desperate. We don't need to make a scene here. I yanked my arm away. No, we're not talking at home. We're talking right here, right now. Emma, stop this, he said, his voice trembling. Please. I wasn't listening. I couldn't. I was done. John Walker, military spouses are entitled to free medical care, aren't they? I said, my voice loud enough for the gathering crowd to hear. Then why, when Lily was sick, did I have to take her to a rundown clinic in the village? Why did I have to borrow money just to get Tyler medicine when he had a fever? John's face flushed a deep red. Sweat ran down his forehead. He didn't know what to say, but I wasn't done. Not yet. And another thing, I continued, my voice rising with every word. Our children are supposed to go to the military-dependent school, right? So why is Jason still going to the village elementary school while the children of other officers get an education here? The whispers began. They rippled through the crowd like a wave, each word cutting through the air. That's Company Commander Walker's wife, someone muttered. She has 3 kids, but no one knew. John's face turned pale. He looked like he had just been caught doing something far worse than anything I could imagine. His eyes darted between me and the crowd, his panic rising. Emma, please, he begged again. Let's go home. I shook my head, my resolve hardening. No, John, not this time. I'm done asking for what's rightfully mine. The next time you see us, we'll be living our lives without you. If you refuse to provide for your children, we'll get a divorce. The air around us seemed to hold its breath. John's face twisted in shock, as if the very idea of me walking away was something he never imagined could happen. His gaze flickered nervously to the crowd, the onlookers whispering and watching this explosive confrontation unfold. Mom, what's a divorce? Tyler asked innocently, tugging at my sleeve. I didn't even have to look at him to feel the weight of his words. Tyler was still too young to understand the real gravity of the situation. But Jason, my eldest, had already started to piece things together. I could see the concern in his eyes, the worry that had started to creep into his mind. This was all happening so quickly for him, for all of us. Divorce means Mommy and Daddy won't live together anymore, I said softly, crouching down to face them. But Daddy will still be your father. You'll still see him, and he'll still love you. But where will we live? Jason's voice trembled as he spoke, his eyes wide, searching for some semblance of certainty. You'll live with Mommy, I replied, firmly, my words stronger than I felt. We'll have a new home, a better home, and you will be safe. We will be okay. Tyler nodded, his face lighting up with hope. Will we have toys? Yes, I smiled, gently patting his head. And you'll be able to play with all the other kids there too. Jason will be happy, Lily said, her baby voice adding an innocence to the heavy conversation. Mommy will make us happy. My heart swelled at her words. I pulled all 3 of them close, feeling their small, fragile bodies against mine. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about them. They were depending on me, on this moment, and I would not let them down. John, meanwhile, stood frozen. The words I had thrown at him hung in the air between us, lingering like a heavy fog. He reached for me again, his hand trembling. Emma, I didn't want this. Please, I can change. I can do better. I stepped back, holding my ground. John, it's too late for change. You've had every chance to fix things, but you never did. I gave you the benefit of the doubt for too long, and now, I'm done. I turned away from him, refusing to let him see the tears that threatened to well up in my eyes. I wasn't crying for him. I was crying for the woman I had been, the woman I had allowed myself to become, the quiet wife, the invisible woman. But not anymore. I took the children's hands and started walking away, not looking back. I could feel John's gaze burning into the back of my neck, but I kept my steps steady. This was the first step toward freedom, toward reclaiming everything he had taken from me, from us. The political officer's office was just a short walk away. I wasn't sure if John had anticipated me taking this route, but he wasn't stopping me. He could end single quotes T.as we approached the building. The guard who had first tried to stop us watched in silence. I could see his eyes darting nervously from me to the children and back. He wasn't used to seeing military wives like me, wives who weren't afraid to stand up for themselves, wives who wouldn't be intimidated. The door opened as we entered, and a stern-looking man with glasses stepped forward. "Can I help you, Comrade Shen?" "I'm Emma Shen, John Walker's wife," I said, my voice now steady, sharp. "I need to speak with someone about my family's rights." The man nodded, though his expression was a little surprised. He had probably never dealt with a situation like mine before. Most military wives were silent, obedient, keeping their heads down. But not me, not anymore. "Please follow me," the officer said, leading us down a narrow hallway into an office. The room was small, but the walls felt suffocating. My heart raced as I took a seat. My fingers brushed the edges of the envelope in my bag, proof, evidence of everything John had done. The affair, the lies, the betrayal. But before I could speak, the door opened again, and John stepped inside, his face ashen. His eyes locked onto me, and for a moment, he seemed like the man I once knew, lost, defeated, uncertain. But beneath that uncertainty was something else, something darker. He wasn't sorry. He was just afraid. "Emma," John began, his voice shaking. "Please, let's talk. Let's fix this. I made a mistake." I stood up, cutting him off before he could continue. "Fix this? After everything? After you lied, cheated, and left us for dead?" I didn't care if he felt bad now. I didn't care if he regretted it. "You don't get to fix this. You don't get to waltz back in and make everything okay." The room was silent as I turned to the officer. "We want a divorce," I said clearly, "and I want my children's rights recognized. I want them to have the medical care, education, and security they deserve. John has done nothing to provide that." John's face twisted with anger. "This is ridiculous, Emma. You're going too far. You can't just take everything from me. I'm their father, and you've been a father to them when?" I shot back, voice sharp. "When you've been sleeping around with Mary Lewis? When you've been too busy with your military duties to even show up for your kids?" John flinched, his anger faltering in the face of my words. But I wasn't done. "Let's be clear," I said, my voice cold. "I don't need you, John. I never needed you. But I'll fight for what my kids deserve. They deserve to grow up with a father who's there for them. They deserve to be seen, heard, and loved. And if you can't give them that, I'll make sure they get everything they're entitled to, with or without you." The officer, watching us both, finally spoke. "Comrade Shen, it's clear you've thought this through. We will begin the process immediately. You will have full legal support. John, you will need to answer for your actions." John's face drained of color as the weight of his situation settled in. He wasn't in control anymore, and he knew it. The room felt colder now. The tension in the air could be cut with a knife. John's silence spoke louder than anything he could have said. He was losing, and somehow, even though I had anticipated it, the realization still hit me hard. It wasn't just his power that was slipping away, it was the years of my life, the years I had given him, now unraveling before me. I turned back to the officer, my heart pounding in my chest, but my voice steady. "I want a divorce. I want everything split right down the middle. The children's education, their medical care, every benefit they're entitled to. And most importantly, I want the child support he owes us. I want him to pay for every single month he hasn't been here." The officer nodded solemnly. "We'll get to work on it, Comrade Shen. The organization will take appropriate action." John shifted uncomfortably, trying to find his footing, but his voice cracked when he finally spoke. "Emma, please, let's just go home. I'm sorry for everything, okay? Let's fix it." "Fix it?" I repeated, my voice dripping with venom. "You can't fix this, John. You had your chance, and you blew it. Do you think sorry fixes years of betrayal? Do you think sorry fixes the look in Jason's eyes every time you don't come home? Do you think sorry can fix all the nights I've spent alone, carrying this burden by myself?" I took a breath, my emotions simmering just beneath the surface, but I wasn't going to let him see me break. Not now, not when everything was finally falling into place. "John, you've destroyed this family, and now you will pay the price. You will not get to sweep this under the rug. You will not get to pretend this never happened." I stepped closer to him, my voice cold, sharp like a blade. "If you were a man of honor, if you cared about your family, you would have been here. But you weren't, and now you will face the consequences." His eyes flickered with guilt. He wasn't saying anything. Not really. His apology was hollow, meaningless. He was just trying to salvage what was left of his pride. But I had seen enough of his lies to know it was too late for him to pretend to be the man I once believed in. I turned to the officer again, my voice resolute. I want a fair process. I want to be treated with respect. I don't need to beg for what's rightfully mine. The officer exchanged a glance with his colleagues. They were silent, processing my words. After what seemed like an eternity, the officer spoke again. Comrade Shen, your determination is admirable. We will ensure your requests are met. This matter will be handled with the seriousness it deserves. John opened his mouth as if to protest, but nothing came out. His face, once so full of arrogance and entitlement, had now crumbled into something else. Regret, fear, but it wasn't enough. Emma, John's voice broke. You're making a mistake. We're family. You don't have to do this. I didn't look at him. I couldn't. You stopped being family a long time ago. You just didn't notice. With that, I turned on my heel and walked out of the office, my children following closely behind me. The weight of the moment settled in my chest, but I was no longer afraid. This was the hardest thing I had ever done, but it was the right thing. As we walked back to the military compound's gates, the quiet around us was deafening. The kids were unusually silent, and I couldn't tell if it was from fear or confusion. They were too young to understand the full weight of what had just happened, but they knew something had shifted. Jason finally spoke, his voice small but full of questions. Mom, is Dad really never coming home? My heart cracked at his words, but I couldn't let him see that. I couldn't break down in front of him. Not now, sweetheart, I said gently, crouching to his level. Your dad is still your dad, but sometimes grown-ups make decisions that hurt everyone around them. We can't change that, but what we can change is how we move forward. And I promise you, we will be okay. Tyler tugged at my sleeve. Mom, I'm scared. I pulled him close, my hands trembling. For a moment before I regained my composure. I know, baby, but you don't need to be scared. We're stronger than we think. And we have each other. Lily, still too young to fully grasp the situation, hugged me tightly. We're family, Mommy. Just us. Yes, I whispered, fighting back tears. Just us. The next few days were a blur of paperwork and meetings, and yet, despite the whirlwind, I felt a strange sense of calm settling in. For the first time in years, I was in control. I had made a decision. I had taken action. I wasn't sitting idly by, waiting for someone to save me. The process moved quickly, too quickly, as if everyone in the compound had been waiting for me to finally speak up. I was a military wife, yes, but I was also a woman, a mother, and it seemed that, for the first time, people were finally seeing me for what I was not. Just John Walker's wife, but Emma Shen, a woman who would fight for her children, for her family. John didn't show up at the compound after that. He didn't come to pick up the kids or try to apologize again. Maybe he knew that nothing he could say would undo the damage. Maybe he finally understood that this time, I wasn't the same woman he had married. I was stronger, more determined. And that scared him. I didn't care. It was too late for apologies. Too late for him to play the victim. Now, it was time for me to rebuild, to give my children the life they deserved. And no matter what it took, I would fight for it. A week later, I stood in front of the county's legal office with the divorce papers in hand. The weight of it was heavy in my chest, but there was something else there now. Something that wasn't just sorrow, it was relief. Mom, is this the last time we'll see Daddy? Jason asked, looking up at me with wide, uncertain eyes. I nodded, my throat tight. Yes, Jason, this is the last time. But will we be okay? I knelt down to meet his gaze. Yes, we'll be more than okay. We're going to build a life together, a better life, and I'm going to make sure of it. The days blurred together in a strange, surreal way. There was a sense of quiet after the storm, but that quiet was like the calm before something even bigger hit. I wasn't sure what I was waiting for, but I could feel the anticipation building inside me. Something was about to change, something big, and I wasn't sure if it was going to be the relief I thought I'd get, or if it would be another blow, one I hadn't seen coming. But for the first time in years, I was living for myself. My children and I, we were in control. The life I'd fought for was finally ours, no longer in John's hands. And yet, even with all the victory, there was still a nagging feeling, an emptiness I couldn't quite shake. I moved us into a small, but clean apartment within the compound. It wasn't much to bedrooms, a living room, and a small kitchen, but it was ours. It wasn't the house I had dreamed of, but it was more than I had ever thought possible after everything I had been through. We had privacy, we had space, and most importantly, I had my dignity back. The kids adapted quickly. Jason took to school like a fish to water, his grades improving steadily. Tyler and Lily, though younger, settled into the kindergarten without hesitation. Their teachers loved them, often praising their manners and intelligence, which made me beam with pride. They were growing up strong, confident, and full of life. And for the first time in ages, I felt like I had given them something better than the broken home I had grown up in. Yet, even as I found peace in the small moments, there was a part of me that couldn't forget John. He wasn't a constant presence in our lives anymore, but I knew that wasn't the end of our story. I could feel the tension, the unwelcome thought that kept creeping into my mind. He would be back. He would fight. And when he did, it would get ugly. A week after we moved into the apartment, I was at the local market when I saw him. John. He was standing at the counter, his face tired, his posture slumped. But it wasn't just him that caught my attention. It was the woman standing beside him, Mary. She was standing a little too close to him, their fingers brushing just slightly as they talked. And I could see the look in his eyes one I had seen 1,000 times before, full of guilt and regret. I froze for a second, my heart lurching in my chest. I didn't want to see him like this. I didn't want to be reminded of everything he had done to me and my kids, but I couldn't look away. He saw me then, our eyes met, and for a moment, he looked surprised. And then, something shifted in his expression, something cold, something distant. He didn't come to speak to me. He didn't try to explain himself. Instead, he turned away, almost as if he hadn't seen me at all. Mary looked up at me, but her gaze was quick, almost dismissive. I wasn't important enough to even acknowledge. It was as if she was daring me to make a scene, daring me to confront her. But I didn't. I didn't need to. I had already won. What I saw in John's eyes was everything I needed to know. He had moved on. He had his new life, his new family. And I had mine. It was strange. I felt a flash of anger surge up inside me, but it was quickly replaced by something else. Not sadness, not regret, just acceptance. I had no more space in my life for him, for any of the lies he had fed me. He was nothing now. Nothing but a man who had lost everything because he couldn't see the treasure he already had. I turned and left the market without another glance at him. The moment I stepped out onto the street, I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me. He had nothing left to take. He had nothing left to hurt me with. But that night, as I tucked my children into bed, I couldn't help but feel the looming presence of what was to come. He would fight. He wouldn't let us go without a struggle. John wasn't the kind of man who gave up easily, and I knew deep down that he wouldn't just let me go on without trying to get something from me. The knock on the door came late that evening. I wasn't expecting anyone, and I wasn't in the mood for company. But when I opened the door, I wasn't prepared for the sight in front of me. John stood there. His face was worn, tired, and his eyes were full of something I hadn't seen in years. Guilt. But it wasn't the same guilt I had seen in the past, the one he used to manipulate me. No. This was different. It was real, and it terrified me. Emma, John began, his voice low. I need to talk to you about the kids, about everything. I stood there, my hand still on the door, as I sized him up. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His hair was disheveled, his uniform slightly out of place, but there was something else in his eyes now. Fear. The fear that maybe he had already lost everything. John, I said, my voice firm, but not cold. You don't get to just walk back into our lives. Not after everything. Please, he pleaded, taking a step closer. I know I messed up. I know I've hurt you, but I can fix this. I want to be a part of their lives again. I shook my head, holding my ground. No, you don't get to fix this. Not now. Not after everything you've done. He flinched, the words stinging more than I think he expected. But there was a shift in his demeanor, a moment of realization that I wasn't the woman who had blindly stood by his side anymore. I had found my strength, my voice, and it wasn't going away. I'm asking for one more chance, John said, his voice breaking. I can't lose them. I can't lose you. I wanted to laugh, not in humor, but in sheer disbelief. John, You lost me the moment you decided your own desires were more important than this family. You lost me the moment you thought I would just sit quietly while you destroyed everything we had." His shoulders slumped, defeated. "I know. I'm sorry. I just don't know how to fix it." "Then maybe it's time you learn how to live with the consequences," I said quietly, the finality in my tone leaving no room for negotiation. "You'll still be their father, but that's all you'll ever be, and you'll never disrupt our lives again." He didn't say anything after that. He just stood there, staring at me for a moment, as if waiting for me to change my mind. But I didn't. I couldn't. John turned and walked away, and I stood there in the doorway, watching him go. I wasn't sure what I was feeling: relief, anger, or something else entirely. But I did know one thing. This was the last time he would try to tear us apart. As the door clicked shut, I finally allowed myself to breathe. The next few days passed in a strange haze of normalcy. The world outside seemed to move on, but inside my home, everything felt like it had shifted into a new, more defined chapter. The children were thriving, their laughter filling the rooms of our small apartment. Jason had even started making friends at school, and for the first time in ages, I felt a weight lift from my chest as I watched them play, carefree and full of life. But in the back of my mind, there was still a nagging sensation, a quiet voice telling me that this wasn't over. It couldn't be. John didn't give up that easily, and I knew, deep down, that whatever he was planning, it would only get worse before it got better. That night, as I sat on the couch, knitting the last of the scarves for the military families I had been helping for years, the knock on the door came again. This time, it was different. It was urgent, forceful, like someone knew exactly how to push the buttons I had spent so long building around my life. I opened the door, and there he stood again, John. But this time, he wasn't alone. Behind him was Mary. Her presence was unmistakable. The woman who had destroyed everything I thought I knew. She was wearing a thin smile that didn't reach her eyes, her hands clasped together as if she had won some sort of game. "Emma," John said, his voice trembling with something I couldn't place. "We need to talk." I didn't even let him finish his sentence. "What is it this time, John?" I asked, my voice sharp. "You and Mary have come to finish what you started? What do you want from me now?" John glanced at Mary, his gaze uncertain, like he wasn't entirely sure where this conversation was going. But Mary stepped forward with a confidence I had come to despise. She was still wearing that cold, unflinching smile as she spoke. "Emma, we're here to make things right," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "We want to talk about the kids, about how John still wants to be a part of their lives." I felt a strange heat rise in my chest. The nerve of this woman, the audacity to stand there and pretend like she had done nothing wrong, like she had the right to be in my life, in my children's lives, after everything she had done. "You have no right to be here," I said, my voice ice cold. "None of you do." John shifted uncomfortably, but Mary stood her ground, her eyes never leaving me. "We want to do this the right way, Emma. We want to go to court. We want to make sure John still has access to the kids. He's their father." I stepped back, my hand gripping the door handle, trying to keep the frustration from boiling over. "I don't need you to make things right, Mary. The only thing you've done is destroy everything we had. And now you're standing here pretending to be the hero." John looked down at the ground, his silence speaking volumes. But I wasn't letting him off the hook this time. I wasn't going to let him pretend like he hadn't known exactly what he was doing when he tore our family apart. He had never loved me, not the way he should have. "You think this is about you being a father?" I asked, my voice shaking with fury. "This isn't about the kids. It's about control. It's about your ego. You don't get to walk back into our lives whenever you feel like it, John. Not anymore." I slammed the door shut, my breath coming in shallow gasps. I could hear John and Mary talking outside, their voices muffled, but I didn't care anymore. I didn't care what they wanted. They had no hold over me, no power, and I would not let them tear apart everything I had worked so hard to build. I sat down on the couch. The children's voices echoed from the other room. They were laughing, playing a game, oblivious to the storm that had just passed through our door. I didn't want them to see the anger I felt. I didn't want them to witness the fight I had been forced into, but I knew they would grow up strong, regardless of what John tried to do. A few days later, I received the formal papers. John was filing for joint custody. He was challenging my decision to keep the kids with me, to raise them without his interference. I could feel the tension building. Again, the fight I had been dreading. This wasn't just about the kids anymore. This was about power, control, and John's inability to accept that he had lost. The legal documents sat in front of me, a reminder of the battle that was coming. But I wasn't going to back down. I had fought for my children, for their future, and I wasn't going to let John rip it away from me. That night, I went to the library and began researching everything I could about child custody laws. I needed to be prepared. I had to know exactly what I was up against. And what I found was even more infuriating. John didn't just want his kids. He wanted to win. He wanted to make me feel small and significant, but I wasn't going to let that happen. I wasn't going to let him think he could bully me into submission. I had fought too hard for this new life. I had built something real, something worth protecting. As I read through the materials, a new sense of purpose washed over me. I wasn't just fighting for my rights anymore. I was fighting for my children. I was fighting for their future. And I wasn't going to let anyone take that from me. The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings, court hearings, and tense exchanges with John and Mary. It felt like the walls were closing in, but I kept my head high. I wasn't going to let John see me break. Not again. Finally, the day of the custody hearing arrived. The courtroom was cold, sterile, and everything felt too official. John was sitting on the other side, his eyes cold and calculating. And Mary, she was there too, of course, standing beside him, supporting him, even though she had no real claim over any of this. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't hesitate. I stood up, my voice strong and unwavering. I recounted everything: my years of sacrifice, my tireless effort to provide for my children, the pain of living through John's betrayal, and the unrelenting love I had for my kids. And then, with a steady hand, I placed the evidence on the table: photos of John and Mary together, receipts, love letters, everything I had meticulously collected over the years. I made sure the court knew the truth. I am not asking for special treatment, I said, my voice unwavering. I am asking for what is rightfully mine. I'm asking for what my children deserve. The judge listened carefully, and after a long pause, he turned to John. Mr. Walker, do you have anything to say in your defense? The judge asked, his voice stern. John opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. He looked like a man who had been caught in his own web of lies, his words useless now. I didn't need to hear him speak anymore. His actions had already spoken. For him, the courtroom was silent, the air thick with tension. John sat there, his mouth hanging open, his eyes darting around as if searching for the right words. But there was nothing he could say. Nothing that would undo the years of lies, the years of betrayal he had lost. And for the first time, I could see it in his eyes. Defeat. The judge's gaze moved from John to me. Comrade Shen, he began, his voice steady, but tinged with a quiet respect. You've presented your case clearly and with evidence. Mr. Walker, can you offer any valid reason why your children should live with you? John opened his mouth again, but the words seemed stuck in his throat. Mary, who had been standing silently beside him, leaned in slightly, whispering something in his ear. He nodded, but I could tell by the defeated look in his eyes that he wasn't sure of what he was doing anymore. I can provide for them, John finally stammered, but his voice lacked the confidence it once held. I'm their father. I deserve a chance to be a part of their lives. The judge didn't even flinch at his words. He was a man of few words, but the look he gave John was enough to make him shrink under the pressure. The entire courtroom was still, as if waiting for the inevitable to happen. I see, the judge said. Mr. Walker, based on the evidence presented and your own testimony, it seems your actions over the past few years have not demonstrated the stability or commitment necessary to fulfill the role you seek. Comrade Shen has proven herself to be a capable and loving mother, one who has ensured the welfare of her children despite your absence. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. This was it, the final moment, the culmination of everything I had fought for, everything I had endured. But even as the judge spoke, a part of me felt detached, almost numb. I wasn't fighting for my own happiness anymore. I was fighting for their future, my children's future. The judge continued, "Given the circumstances, I believe it is in the best interest of the children to remain with their mother, Comrade Shen. The court will grant full custody to her, and Mr. Walker will be entitled to visitation rights, pending a formal agreement." John's face went pale. I didn't need to look at him to know how badly he was hurting inside. But it didn't matter anymore. He had made his choices, and now he had to live with them. The judge looked at me. "Comrade Shen, you will have full legal custody of your children. Mr. Walker will be required to pay child support as per the law, and we will ensure that his visitation rights are respected, though these will be strictly regulated to ensure they do not interfere with the children's well-being." I nodded, my voice still calm, but my heart swelling with a mixture of relief and finality. "Thank you, Your Honor." The judge gave a short nod, and with that, the hearing was over. The gavel struck, and I felt the weight of the moment settle in. It was done. Finally, it was done. As I left the courtroom with my children, I could feel the weight lifting from my shoulders. John, who had once been the center of my world, was nothing now. He was just a man who had lost everything: his family, his respect, his dignity. And as I stepped out into the fresh air, I knew I was free. Free from the years of living in the shadow of his betrayal. Free from the constant fear of what would happen next. And most importantly, free to build a future for my children, one where they could be happy, healthy, and loved without the chaos John had brought into our lives. A few weeks passed, and the children and I settled into our new life. John made a few attempts to see them, but each time, it felt like he was trying to control the situation again. His visits were short, stiff, and awkward. The kids didn't want him there. They didn't need him anymore. The truth was, they had already found a new sense of stability, a new sense of safety, and I had become the one they depended on, the one they trusted. One afternoon, after a particularly uneventful visit from John, I sat down with the kids and we talked. I wanted them to understand what had happened, to help them make sense of everything. "Mom," Jason asked, looking up at me with his wide eyes, "will Daddy ever be back for good?" I took a deep breath, my heart heavy. "No, sweetheart, Daddy won't be coming back. But that doesn't mean he doesn't love you. He does, in his own way. But we don't need him, right?" Tyler asked, his voice innocent, yet full of understanding. "No, baby," I said, pulling him into my arms. "You don't need him. You have me, and you always will." Lily, who had been quietly playing with her toys, looked up at me. "Mom, are we going to be okay?" I smiled, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "We're more than okay. We're better than okay." I had spent so many years believing that I needed John, that somehow he was the key to our family's happiness. But now, I realized that the key was always with me. It was my strength, my determination, my love for my children. I was the one who had held us together, even when it felt like everything was falling apart. That night, after the kids had gone to bed, I sat in the living room, staring out the window. The city was quiet, the stars barely visible through the haze of the streetlights. But in that moment, everything felt clear. Everything felt right. I had made it. I had survived. And now, I was ready for whatever came next. No longer chained by John's lies. I was free to live my life the way I always should have. I had proven to myself that I was strong enough, that I could stand tall, no matter what the world threw at me. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I was ready. A month passed since the custody hearing, and the days that followed felt like a slow, healing process. The kids were thriving. Jason, who had once struggled with his schoolwork, was now excelling, his teachers impressed with his quick progress. Tyler, full of energy and curiosity, had become a favorite among the other children at his kindergarten. Lily, always the quiet one, was starting to speak more, her words coming easier, her smiles wider. It felt like a dream, one I had worked so hard for, but one I was finally living. I had settled into my new role as a woman free from the shadows of John's manipulation. I had a job now, simple office work in the finance department within the military compound, and while the pay wasn't great, it was enough to keep us comfortable, enough to allow me to provide for my children without depending on anyone. I was no longer the woman I had been just a year ago, the woman too scared to step out of her husband's shadow. I had become someone else entirely strong, capable, independent, but life wasn't without its challenges. The sting of betrayal was still there, buried beneath the surface, and every now and then, a memory would flash through my mind, a whispered promise John had made, a touch I had once trusted, now forever tainted by lies. Even though I had won, even though I had found peace in the aftermath, there were moments when I found myself haunted by what could have been. Still, I couldn't let those thoughts consume me. My children needed me more than anything, and every day was a new chance to prove to them that we could create our own happiness, that we didn't need anyone to complete us. We were a family, just the three of us, and we were stronger than we had ever been. Then one afternoon, a knock came at the door again. This time, my heart didn't skip a beat. I had grown accustomed to the idea that John might show up from time to time, trying to see the kids or apologize in his own way. But this time was different. This time, the knock wasn't from him. I opened the door, and to my surprise, it wasn't John or Mary. It was someone I hadn't expected, an officer from the compound. A man in his mid-50s, dressed in a crisp uniform, with a stern look in his eyes. "Comrade Shen," he said with a respectful nod. "We need to speak with you about a matter concerning your employment and future in the compound." I felt a wave of unease wash over me. "Is something wrong?" I asked, my heart racing. "Not at all," he assured me. "In fact, it's quite the opposite. The leadership in the compound has taken notice of your performance. Your work ethic, your strength as a mother, and your unwavering dedication to your children and community have been commendable. The organization values you, Comrade Shen." His words took me by surprise. It was as if all the hard work, the years of sacrifice, were finally being recognized. I had never expected anything like this. I had only ever wanted to build a better life for my children. But here was someone from the very system I had once felt alienated from, offering me something more, something I hadn't dared to hope for. "We would like to offer you a promotion," he continued. "You've demonstrated exceptional skills in your work, and the leadership feels that you are capable of more. We'd like to offer you the position of Deputy Section Chief in the Finance Department." I stood there, stunned. The promotion wasn't just a recognition of my work, it was a chance to move forward, to leave behind the woman I had been and step into the future I had always wanted. A future where I wasn't just surviving, but thriving. A future where my children and I could finally have everything we deserved. "I don't know what to say," I stammered, overwhelmed. "This is unexpected. It's well-deserved, Comrade Shen," the officer said, his voice firm but kind. "You've earned it. We have no doubt you'll excel in this new role."